Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics, a sobering week in Missouri politics. We're going to bring you our full opinion maker panel for the whole show. We'll start with Representative Gene Evans from St. Louis County. Welcome back.
Nice to be here.
St. Charles County, friend of the show, Representative Kathie Conway. Welcome back.
Thank you, Scott.
Jane Dueker, a longtime friend of the show, now congratulations on the new firm.
Thank you.
No longer a Clayton attorney or Chesterfield attorney.
Something like that. I'm by myself, hanging up a shingle, and I'm excited.
And Representative Tracy McCreery, thank you for joining us again.
Glad to be here.
Let's start with a story that's dominated state news. Let me kind of set the stage for the viewers that may or may not be up to date. And I always like to say on developing stories like this, we tape this on Friday morning, so if somebody's not up to date with it, that's when they're seeing a glimpse into this show. The governor had publicly disclosed that there had been an affair right before a television report came out. KMOV did a blockbuster report. Their lead investigative journalist, Lauren Traeger, uncovered a tape of a woman and the verification of her husband, the validity of the tape, talking about an affair that may have turned into blackmail, where the governor may have taken some photographs and made some threats. That's obviously stopped all the political world, and it's been focused on this pretty much exactly. There was a report by Talking Points, a memo of a report of some conversations where she was alleged to be hit by the governor, although there was no tape or corroborating evidence to that. You were in the Capitol, the State of the State. It came out that night. What a bizarre time, and what is the reaction right now amongst your colleagues?
Well, I think a lot of us are still in disbelief, to tell you the truth. I mean, these are such serious allegations that it's really hard to get our heads around this. And, the thing that I keep going back to is, there are differences between things that happen privately and publicly, but I'm most focused and concerned about violence and threats against women. And I think that's maybe getting lost in this story is, those violence and threats against women are never acceptable, and they need to be fully investigated.
Jane Dueker, I mean, in our society, throughout every aspect of it, I think you're seeing a reevaluation of the relationship between men and women. This particular story comes at a very interesting time in our culture.
Well, absolutely. And again, the affair is not the issue. It's the alleged blackmail, the alleged assault. If these are crimes, they need to be investigated. And frankly, I was heartened by the swift response by all the members of the Missouri General Assembly who right away said, this is not going to work. If this is true, this is horrible. And so I am glad that we've gotten to that point where everyone uniformly, bipartisan, male, female, all comes out and says, not in our state. That's great. But, I mean, we do need to get to the point where he starts being accountable. Stop talking through lawyers. Talk to the press. Talk to your colleagues. Tell the truth. Come clean. That's what everybody's asking for.
Is that the situation? Is this permissible by Missouri Republicans to happen in our state?
Well, no, I don't think it's permissible, and it wouldn't matter if it was the governor or the mailman. It's just, it's activity that if proven true, would not be acceptable. But I think three of us sitting here could have an awesome responsibility down the road.
Oh.
If things come to light that some sort of impeachment may be pursued, we have to separate personal from our constitutional duties here. And you may or may not know, for 33 years I was an investigator. I worked for both public defenders, prosecutors, and other things. And my personal feelings could not become involved with my investigative job. So I think that we all need to take a step back. How I feel personally may or may not ever apply to what my constitutional duty could become.
It was an interesting thing. The governor went out immediately and hired a very high-powered criminal defense firm to defend him. Kim Gardner has now stepped forward and said she's going to investigate this matter as a criminal offense. Obviously, if this happened, there's probably an element to that. Are Republicans willing to sit back and wait for that investigation to come out?
Well, as a caucus, we've discussed it, and we want to wait till we have all the facts. And so, although I think people are disappointed in the affair, it's not illegal, and we're waiting for the facts to see if there was indeed illegal activity. And something else we discussed as a caucus is that there's another family here that's been impacted.
Sure.
And so we are concerned about that family as well. And if this is a one-time thing and the governor asks for forgiveness, there are still consequences that come from these actions, and it's already affected another family. It's impacted our legislature already.
Sure.
It's a distraction, and
could be an obstacle to getting things done that we need to get done in this state.
So, Jane Drew, you're an attorney. This comes back to, I think, a pretty simple situation. The governor nor his criminal lawyer has said that this wasn't that woman on the tape. Obviously, the governor intimately knows this woman better than anybody else that's going to have an ID on it outside of her husband, who says it was her. If that tape's verified, I guess the governor is then saying she's lying.
Well, and that's sort of where this lie, no pun intended, that, you know, either the tape is completely false and it isn't her and it was just made up. That's an option. The other option is it is her on the tape, but she was lying, which only she can say whether what she said to her husband was true or not, or it is true. And those are facts. Those are things that need to be determined. And it's not complicated, it's uncomfortable. And that's what everybody is feeling, is the uncomfortableness of how horrible this is and how worried they are that, one, this is true, and two, there may be others. And as often, sadly, that is the case. And so, yeah, we need to get to the truth. And I understand that it's uncomfortable, but there are public concerns here. If this man committed a crime as a state official or right there up, I mean, let's not forget, he had already announced for a governor when some of this had happened. He was planning on it. I mean, this is,
So just to put
there
the
is
timeline,
public
this
interest
incident-
involved here.
This incident happened in March. He was at Lincoln Day in January of that year. It's the weekend, I believe, maybe even early February, where Tom Schweik had passed. The following week, he was there campaigning for governor. I actually met with
September.
him. Yeah, I mean,
she had to write an email in October asking him to leave her alone. Okay, so there was a lot that happened between March, the incident that was on the tape that was reported in the media, and October when she asked him to leave her alone. I mean, something happened there to prompt that email.
Representative Governor, I mean, clearly you're an investigator. There's two parts to this. If that tape is wrong, and there's two people we know of that know this woman intimately, her husband and the governor of the state of Missouri. The husband says this is her. The governor nor his criminal defense lawyer has said it's not. If it is true, if the tape is her, there's ways you can verify these tapes, correct? If this is that person. If it is true, then I guess he's calling her a liar, and will that stand in the Missouri House?
Well, you know, there are ways, and there's voice recognition and all this sort of thing. So I guess we'll wait and see. My concern is for her greatly.
Yeah.
I worked with many rape victims, many abuse victims who just didn't want to tell their story.
Sure.
And to put her in a situation that she may, I mean, this is a big deal.
Absolutely.
This isn't something where nobody knows the players. And to put her on what's becoming a national and even international stage unwillingly could backfire as well.
Well, I think all the media, which is it's always funny when outlets don't break the story, they become very sanctimonious. When they do, they become very excited. But no one has put her name out, and of course we won't do it here. The governor has actually started talking. I think he started first with his donors, alongside the First Lady. She asked for privacy, but she was involved in these calls. I think we honor that privacy where she decides to exert it. Then the governor started calling Republican women legislators. Will those calls be effective, and were you called?
I did receive a call from the governor and the First Lady, and I have a great deal of respect for the First Lady, and so I think that conversation needs to remain private.
Sure. When you left, though, was it an effective thing? Do you think if he replicates that throughout your colleagues, that'll make people view it differently and think this behavior is now acceptable?
I wouldn't go that far. I think it was a step. Definitely, I appreciated the call, but I think there's still more work to do.
The idea that he would call donors a day after, I mean, that made me borderline nauseous. And to put his wife there, look, no matter what, and I respect her and her beliefs and what she decides to do is her choice, and you know, and I will support her. But I mean, you call donors. That's your first step. I mean, I appreciate that he's calling his colleagues. I think that is important. I just don't think. I think that's completely inappropriate. I really do.
Will the move of the governor and the First Lady call donors and call legislators and the criminal defense lawyer talk to the public, will that work?
Well, work for what? You know, right now, this is
To remain
such
in
a...
office.
Well, that's going to remain to be seen. You know, I think right now there is such a dark cloud hanging over the state that we are going to be unable to do our work. And we were elected, and people want us to go and get things done. And my concern is if he remains in office, that it's just going to cause us to not be able to get things done.
Representative, I mean, it comes to me, if the governor only speaks through his criminal defense lawyer, and if the governor then will talk to legislators, does that work? At some point, do you not say you should answer the public?
I don't know enough. I mean, I just can't say. I've been in too many he said, she said, what's going on here. I do think that communication is key. And as a public
So has
figure...
the governor communicated a lot with you up to now?
No.
Let's talk about moving forward as far as legislation and things go. There's already been an event in Poplar Bluff, Missouri that was scheduled for this week that's been canceled. It definitely begins to encroach and involve the legislative things that move. The House was set to third read and finally passed some bills dealing with lobbyist reforms and stuff. The governor and the state of the state certainly took some time to lecture legislators about their ethics. That work has stopped. The public events are being canceled. At what point does this truly impact the business of the state of Missouri?
It's hard for me to know. I want to go back to the question that you answered, in that I'm receiving contact from constituents and they want transparency. They want full transparency on this and other issues with the governor.
Have you seen a lot of transparency from this administration?
Not me personally. I mean, I don't have a strong relationship with the governor, so I can't say that. But the things that I'm hearing from constituents on both sides of the aisle, Republicans included, is they want transparency and they want an answer.
Governor, you're a veteran legislator. You've worked on some things that wanted is there any definition of transparent that you would call this administration up to today? Could you say that with a straight face to any of your constituents, the administration is transparent?
I haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah. Jane Dueker, moving forward,
it's something that you indicate you didn't have a close relationship with the governor. No one seems to.
Maybe you did that Confide app.
Well, that's a whole nother level of, I'm not a big fan of that either. And so I think what this illustrates is that it is very difficult when any politician, your job is to get consensus and to build a coalition of people in order to get laws passed in order to help the state of Missouri. This man can't build a coalition of anything. And that wasn't, this has only exacerbated that problem. But this man has been an island since day one, and that was his choice. The problem is when you're an island, democracy doesn't work well. Democracy requires concerted action among people to get things done. This man has divided. He has been not transparent, and now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. And I do think it's going to impact the ability of the state to move forward.
To be fair, Nixon did not communicate with the legislature either.
That is fair.
I never spoke with him, and I requested meetings with him as well, and never had that opportunity.
Tracy
Right, but the
McCreery,
state didn't shut down.
just to wrap, just to try to bring this to conclusion, he did campaign and call you a corrupt career politician.
Not me personally.
He certainly called many people,
Right.
referred to all of you as part of swamps and things, and I think he meant his campaign pledge. He doesn't have a high opinion of the legislature or the people that were elected to it, or the people maybe then elected them to it. Do you think if this continues, I don't see any way he steps aside.
No, it appears as of today that he's dug his heels in.
The state does this process, if they were to have to make a move, starts with Todd Richardson. I think the state may be fortunate to have someone of his character in this position at this time.
Speaker Richardson,
Yes.
I agree. He's very well respected on both sides of the aisle, and I think he's been nothing but great to work with, and I'm in the minority party, and he's been great to work
If anybody that's not a sycophant in the legislature, he has the best relationship of any serious independent person with the governor. They've not clashed publicly. I think he probably is the right person for this time.
I agree. I'm comfortable with Todd leading the charge.
What you know today, loaded question, do you see the governor of the state of Missouri maintaining his position?
Yes.
I hope not.
I have no idea.
Just depends on if anything else comes out.
Interesting. We'll be right back. We'll continue our Opinion Maker panel, talk about the State of the State address after this.
In 2008, Republic Services acquired the Bridgeton landfill in a merger. Since then, we've invested $200 million to clean up the site and to maintain environmental compliance. We do that while staffing the facility 24/7. That's because we support permanent solutions that are safe for our neighbors and clean up the environment. We're committed to doing what's right. That's what drives us every day. We're a part of the community, and we are here for the long haul. Republic Services. We'll handle it from here.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greiton said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
At Ameren, Missouri, we believe in the power of light. It makes scary stories less scary, and nighttime adventures more likely to last the night. A bright enough light can illuminate opportunities to affect positive change, neighborhoods that need a helping hand, and the advancements needed to ensure tomorrow is a little cleaner than today. Transforming the future of our community by shining light in every direction. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back this week in Missouri politics. Let's talk about the state of the state, Representative. Obviously, rumors of versions of this story filled the Capitol even the day before. Wednesday night was the most awkward state of the state, maybe in the history of statehood. The governor gave a very short speech that said actually little to nothing. Was there anything you took out of that was substantive?
What I took out of the speech was the glaring lack of any substantial issues mentioned at all. There was no mention of transportation infrastructure, of education, of the opioid crisis. You know, the speech, what the speech said to me is the governor was in a really big hurry to get off of the podium, and
in some ways, understandably.
Yeah, understandable.
And if you're Representative Kevin Corlew, who's worked hard, who's put together a real plan, he's done adult stuff in an age where adults aren't normally honored.
Right.
Do you really want this governor that day to embrace your plan?
Well, good point. But I think we just need to realize we have a lot of work to do, and we're being not only distracted from our real work, but then there was no guidance issued that night during the State of the State.
It was bizarre, Jane Dueker. You've seen several of these.
I've helped write them. I've stood there.
The governor was
shortest
heaped a
whatever.
lot of praise on the First Lady for some of the things she'd been doing.
You better.
After that, I'm not sure what he really talked about that would have any. He saved a couple $1,000s on some printing thing, but other than that, it was a very thin speech.
It was, and again, I think we're going to have to look to the legislature to come formulate the policy for the state of Missouri, and I guess that's good. I'm heartened by the fact I've been talking a lot with Senator Eigel about the tax reform stuff. This is real stuff. This is stuff that can get bipartisan support. It's stuff that, you know, that we've been talking about for 20 years. Close loopholes, simplify. There are things that are easy. You know, I don't know what maybe he was looking for home runs, but we need some singles and some doubles and some real things that need to happen now. And so it's going to be the legislature that's going to do it. He gave away his power.
As a Democrat, was it given away, or was an investigative journalist exposed things that made it go away? I think as a Democrat, though, you have to say as a Missourian, if you're gonna have a governor this week, it's not the worst thing to have a guy like Todd Richardson as the Speaker of the House.
That's what I mean. That's what I say. I mean, it's just time to. I mean, look, this is all going to play out, but the legislature is going to step up and have to do what they need to do, and they're going to. And I agree with you. Todd is a good leader who can you know, really hopefully get it back on track so that Missourians think that something's happening for them.
I mean, right now the moral standard of the state is Ron Richard and Todd Richardson, I'd say, right?
Oh, I would say absolutely. And every member of the legislature. Yes. I think that all of us have stepped up. We've been scandal-free. We've been above board. We're as transparent as we can be. I'm very comfortable with the group I serve with.
It is in a time where maybe Missouri is a national embarrassment. You can point to people, and I had. Journalists that have called me. I was like, well, you know what? I understand why you would think that right now, but you can go to Ron Richard, who is an ethical person, who is an honorable person, who's a family man, that is somebody you could point to a young man and say, you should try to be like him.
Yeah, and I think, you know, everyone I serve with is really serious about public policy.
Yes.
It's a sacrifice.
That gets lost in this sometimes.
Well, and so they're disheartened because they want to get things done, and this is an obstacle.
So the state of the state judge had nothing in it, and you got to cut him a little bit of a break. I mean, what could he have said? Do you have a bill you wanted that governor in that room to really jump behind and say, I want to do this? Might not have been the best ally, but what is the agenda going out that you see that Republicans in your caucus care about?
There are a lot of things. I mean, I know we're going to continue. We want to continue to make the state better for businesses to grow, for people, education, and transportation. I mean, in my district, people are just crying out about transportation. They want to see something done. And human trafficking, we have at least a half dozen bills to deal with human trafficking.
Maybe out of this scandal, that is an issue that could come to the forefront.
Perhaps.
Let's talk about one other thing, though. I found bills that are really big that don't get maybe the attention, like Merchandising Practice Act.
Right.
There's some folks that really care about that are committed to seeing that pass. In this environment or in this governor, I don't think it happens, correct?
You know, you're talking about a bill that I'm not that familiar with, but I think we can overcome the governor. I want to be clear about that. We have a number of great people, like she said, scandal-free, people who are committed. I don't, as much of an obstacle as it is, that doesn't mean we can't overcome it and work through it and get some things done.
It's an interesting point here. Like, people want to talk about the Senate. As a conservative, I love the Senate doesn't pass bills. If they could get it down to the 13 budget bills, boom, I think that's the public safe. But there's a lot of Republicans that care about things like this Merchandising Practices Act. Huge bill, affects a lot of folks. The reason those bills didn't get done last year was the governor's behavior. That's why the Senate ground to a halt. As a Democrat, maybe you kind of want him to stick around.
Well, yeah, because by not altering that act, I'm a consumer advocate, so it gave consumers one more year to be treated fairly and not be ripped off and have their money taken away by unscrupulous business people. So I'm happy with that.
Jane Dueker, you're a parliamentary pro. Having last year the Senate bogged down when the governor would do bizarre things like the dark money stuff. This year, they didn't. I swear it was funny. Everyone was an expert meteorologist. This snow apocalypse was coming, and it was coming at 10:30, and you had to get out for your life. We couldn't have a press conference.
No.
If you're a Democrat, maybe keeping this governor around is exactly what you'd like to see in this supermajority of Republicans.
Well, absolutely. And as as someone who wants to work with legislation, get it out of the Senate early if you want it out. I mean, sadly.
Yeah, the Senate did recognition of special guests, and then of course the snow apocalypse was coming. That.
No, and I mean, you see it, and it's happened, and that is a risk.
The top thing the governor did talk about was ethics, and I've never thought these ethics measures. I think these are people that some of them have good intentions, but usually end up making things less transparent, therefore less ethical. The governor, before the scandal broke at 9:30, did take some time at 7:30 to lecture you about ethics in the legislature. Kind of an odd fit right now.
It may have been, but ethics is something we all need to always be very aware of.
Sure.
I think that the legislature is a very ethical group. Shall we?
I agree with you.
You know, can we back off? Is it really ethics or is it influence? And those are two different things. And I think that everyone needs to be aware that we are not influenced. Some of these ethics bills, I think, will muddy the waters, so to speak, make it more or less transparent, more difficult to trace things.
Lobbyists are terrible unless you're a nurse, and you'd kind of like to have people educated about what your job's really like. Unless you're a carpenter, then you'd kind of like the people to know how the laws would affect being a carpenter. I always think I've always found, especially the media, loves to attack the culture of corruption and all this when they're passing laws they don't like.
Exactly. I mean, the list of lobbyists I met with this week include people from higher education, children's agencies, the municipalities, and most of the lobbyists that I've interacted with are very passionate about making the state better. So I have not, any lobbyist who really is corrupt doesn't last long in the Capitol, because your word is your bond. And so if you don't keep your word or you don't do the right thing, you get a reputation very early, and then you have no influence, you're out of a job.
Are these bills serious, or is this just what people do to preen and maybe play to editorial boards that would never show them any love anyway?
I think the House is taking leadership on a very important issue dealing with putting some restrictions on lobbyist gifts. I wouldn't call it a total gift ban. There's still some very big loopholes, but I think it'd be better to back up to 30,000 feet and think of Representative Elferman's bill, his ethics bill, as part of a package. There's a lot of work to be done.
Jane, let's talk about the U.S. Senate race. This is obviously, when you have a top Senate race, having the governor of your state scandal-ridden is a gift to Senator McCaskill. But I'll say this, whether it was the Confide app scandal, Josh Hawley stepped up, did what a lot of politicians I know on both parties, and I've been one to criticize Josh Hawley. I'm not known as the biggest Josh Hawley cheerleader. He stepped up and did his job with honor. This time, then there's calls for him to investigate the governor again. He said, if the local prosecutor asks, I will do it. I have to say I've not been his biggest fan, but he's done an honorable work for the people of Missouri the last couple months.
I mean, sadly, I read that the governor's office wasn't really cooperating on the confide
not.
investigation, which I find incredibly disturbing. I would like to see him be more aggressive. I mean, he claims prosecutor. You want to be prosecutor? Get in there, get that confide thing. You know, he said he was going to investigate it. Go do it.
And he did.
And
Tracy
so,
McCreery, when the governor hasn't worked with his office, what do? He made a statement and said the governor's not cooperating with the investigation. I understand he's in a very tight Senate race. It's bemoaned to say something nice about someone in their party. I think Josh Hawley has taken his job seriously, treated the folks he works with respect, and the last couple of months has acted more honorably than most people I know from both parties put in that situation.
Well, I'm not going to argue with that, but you know, he's only been the Attorney General for about a year, so.
But it's been a heck of a year. I mean.
Well, but you know, has he really done enough as a statewide elected official to warrant running for the highest chamber in the land, the U.S. Senate? I say no.
It would be very hard to make a resume in a year that you should. Being put in the fire and tested like this and acting honorably is the way you could make a resume in a short period of time.
Right, I think he's done a good job. I work with them a lot on some of my bills. I get a lot of feedback from them. They've been very good on some of my issues. So I am a big fan of his office and his staff, and no scandals. I mean, he's doing a good job so far. I think he's a great Senate candidate, but you know, he's in my party.
Representative, Representative McCreery made a good point. He's only been here a very short period of time, but the way you'd build a resume fast is be put in the fire. A lot of people in both parties would not have acted like he did.
No, I think he's acted well. He knows his job. He knows what's required of him. And it's not a party thing. It's your job to do the work for the state. And I think he has.
Representative, with a minute left, who won the week?
Gloria Brown. She has carried the human trafficking poster hotline for several years. Because of the goodwill and the relationship she has built, it will be the first bill that will be passed out of the House early next week.
Representative, who won the week?
I think Speaker Todd Richardson and Majority Leader Rob Vescovo.
Speaking of a guy put in the fire quick.
Put in the fire quick, just 3 days on the floor. They have acted.
Handled himself well.
They both have. Thank you.
Who won the week?
Senator Doug Leibel. I mean, there were many people who came out and did the right thing with regard to this scandal, but I give him credit for really stepping out there with the letter saying this not in our state and this is not who we are.
And he didn't say impeach the governor. He didn't say run him out. He said let's get directly to the facts.
Absolutely.
It's a statesman move.
Absolutely.
Who won the week?
Nicole Galloway, because she stood up for close to over 500,000 taxpayers, individual taxpayers who have not had their tax refunds yet.
I will say Lauren Traeger won the week, blockbuster investigative reporter at KMOV. I always find it interesting. It's a fashionable time to hate the media. She broke a huge story, and then it's always fun to watch the other folks. No one's better than us at patting ourselves on the back. The other outlets that didn't break it, the pinky wit in the air, and we're a highbrow. And interesting week. Congratulations to her. And we hope to see you next week on hopefully more enjoyable This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.